Okay, that's great.
Okay, well, welcome, those of you live and watching the recording. And I just want to throw this over to Christy, who is our resident financial expert for the evening, and is going to share with us some tips that maybe you didn't know, and maybe I didn't know. So I'm kind of excited about that too. So take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And whether or not people get to hop on or whether they can listen to the recording, hopefully they'll be able to pick up a few things. And Melissa, I'm glad that you're on. You're going to get you and Cheryl will get the front row seat. But I guess it would be a good place for me to just to give you a little bit of background about me and kind of how I came into this business. So I have been in the financial services industry for a little over 2 years. But prior to that, I was in the nonprofit space. And so I moved up to the DC area back in 2000 with the big ideals of working on Capitol Hill. And I got up here and I went, ooh, I do not want to work on Capitol Hill, but I do love public policy. And so that is what I did probably for a good 12 to 13 years. Most of that was at the American Red Cross, and I worked in their state government relations. And then I moved into a role of major gift fundraising, so managing that, and eventually moved over to working for the local chapter of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, doing kind of the same type of role. But I have always had a passion for wanting to, whatever it was I did, I wanted to be able to help other people in that process. And how I ended up in financial services was like most individuals, like most women, I knew a little bit of nothing, right? And I was just kind of one of those people that was curious and I would educate myself. And I managed the household finances. And then somewhere along the way, my husband and I got a divorce. And I ended up, raising my 5-year-old son at the time by myself. And even with the knowledge of knowing how to manage the finances, I still had what am I going to do now? And so the first thing I did was find a female lawyer and a female financial advisor. Now, that is mainly because I wanted, it was important to me, right? There's plenty of other people out there, men that do a great job, but it was important to me to have that. And in that process, I just really became more and more inspired about wanting to be in control of my finances, be able to make good decisions, figure out how I was going to raise my child and, help him, get to school and all the things that we as mothers and parents think about and realize that in the process, there just wasn't a lot of resources, both in the industry and um, just in general, that were geared towards women and how we think about money and what we do. And so with that, the pandemic came along, and a new husband who was also very supportive and said, "I think you need to do this. I think this is something you're really passionate about." So I jumped into the fray, and I have been never been happier. I love what I do. I love trying to help other people just walk away with a sense of peace of mind. We at my firm, I work for a small independent firm in Reston, Virginia, but with partners that have had 20 plus years in the business, and we work really closely as a team. And we are masters at cash flow management. And we often don't think about cash flow management as something that is not outside of a business, but in reality, that is what comes in and what goes out. And so we help individuals kind of figure out, what's going to be important to them, why is it important to them, and then we help them kind of put them on a path, put them on a plan. We review their protection needs. We go through their savings, their retirement, their investments, trying to figure out where are you saving, what are you saving, is that the best place for your money, and if not, why, and how are we going to get you there? And so with that, I'm happy to share my screen and kind of walk through what I had put together for us to talk about tonight. And let me just make sure I find the right screen.
And hopefully, the permissions will allow you. Yes, they will. You're good.
Oh, good. Let me just see if this is. Can you all see my screen?
Yes. And the
Okay,
notes
that's
and the
that's
side
that's a good
thing.
place to start. I know. I'm gonna see if I can get. All right, let's get that out of there. All right, beginning. Well,
You got it.
okay. Okay, good. All right. So, one of the things I wanted to do in this conversation with you all tonight was just to talk through about how to, match your money up with your values. I think as women, we do tend to invest and spend our money based more often on our values and in our goals. Um, Talk a little bit about financial foundation and what that means, how you can make small changes to what you do every day, and then a checklist, and just talk about some planning tips.
Sounds
And
good.
if there's any questions along the way, I really want this to be a conversation process. And really, if there's anything specific that anybody wants to make sure that we talk about, let's lay that on the table. That's not a part of this conversation. One of the things that I love is showing a couple of statistics that really highlight, women and the empowerment of finances and the things that have changed. So you'll see here that the employment of women in the field, women with children, more than doubled in the last 4 decades, and that's not uncommon. I grew up in a generation. I think my mother was from the '60s, and that everyone started working at that point. I didn't know any differently, and so that was the path I took as well. Um, 41% of women uh, are making the financial decisions on their own. Now, I don't have enough information to know whether or not they're single or if that's just a part of their household. But I think that's where we often assume that a couple is maybe making the decisions themselves, or maybe the man in the household. But more and more women are making those significant financial decisions. And this is the one that I find really interesting. And there's been some studies on the fact that in the next decade, more than 2/3 of consumer wealth is going to be controlled by women. And a lot of that has to do with, women outlive men generally. And we are in a population and society that is living longer. So there are, essentially that's what happens is that person, spouse passes away. But there's women are also starting businesses. And Cheryl, you and I talked about this as one of the key things about that I really coach women to think about is having multiple sources of income, you know. And what you all are doing with Arbonne, I think, is just a fabulous, fabulous way to always have something that you have coming into your household. So those are some of the things that, I just amazed that more and more women are in this space. So there was a study that was done that really talked about the top 5 life priorities for individuals. And so you can just look at the screen and you can see being happy, right? Well, money does not buy happiness. We all know that, but it certainly makes the road a little bit easier. And if you don't have to feel stress about money, that is certainly a makes it easier to be happy. Having a great relationship. Does anybody want to dare to guess, like, what is the number one cause of divorce in the US?
Money.
Money, right? Unfortunately. Yep. And the other things are having enough money to just enjoy your life. I mean, I think for most people, and myself included, is I want to be in a position that I don't have to stay in a job or a relationship or whatever because I'm held to money. I want to be in a position that says I get to choose where I want to be and how I want to be there. And of course, raising our children and staying fit. And then the biggest one that I hear a lot, particularly with women, is do I have enough money to retire on? Because, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but retirement is something that we're living a lot longer. And so that's going to be a lot more specific need. So if we just look at, building that financial framework, I wanted to show you this statistic, and everybody probably knows this. If you listen to Susie Orman, if you listen to any Dave Ramsey's or any of the people that are out there talking about this to the general population. But what it's really, this slide is highlighting that when we start saving money, the time value of that money compounds, and we just have a better opportunity to continue to grow that wealth. But so you can kind of just look at this and see, if you start at, depending on when you start, like if you don't start saving until you're in your mid 50s, then it's going to take you 3 times more, to reach the same place. And one of the things that I do like to highlight with this is that maybe you are 50, maybe you are 55, maybe you're 45, and you're looking at this and you're like, well, I haven't really done this. And so you feel discouraged. But the reality is, start saving. Does not matter whether or not you didn't start at 25 and you weren't consistent with it. What matters is that you do it. And so those are some strategies that we can kind of talk about too. Oh, this is good. When I was doing this right before we got started, you will see in a minute the screen starts to populate on its own, and I thought it wasn't going to work for me. So this may be something that I think everybody has heard, and it's kind of like it's sort of like the latte factor, right? Don't drink your lattes; it'll add up. Here's what it adds up to. But I'm never personally giving up my latte. Okay. And when we go through this little list here in a second, I think it's comical to see how much they think a medium coffee actually costs. But nonetheless, what it's really demonstrating is ways in which we spend money and it drips off the balance sheet and we don't know it. And then at the end of the year, you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I could have saved or invested or had this much, as a result of that. I'm guilty of the subscriptions. When you're like, oh, $4.99 a month. Oh, $3.99 a month. And then at the end of the year, I'm like, what in the world have I done? So does anybody? We're going to go through a woman's daily routine, and so see where she spends her money. Let's see if it works for me. Yeah. So medium coffee, $2. See, Cheryl, you're laughing. I totally agree. I'm like, I don't think they live in DC, but we're just gonna go with their explanation for now. But also she gets a muffin in the morning, and then she buys her lunch. Again, that lunch is very, very cheap. I don't know what she's buying. A drink in the afternoon. And so each day she's easily spent $15.50 without paying attention. Well, if you just look at that, you start to see where, okay, $10 a day is $200 a month. And $200 a month is $2,400 a year. And if you invest that $2,400 a year and you get a decent rate of return on it, you've got $265,000 that you could have had in your savings, whereas it was just an offshoot and you thought, okay, I just need that coffee today, or whatever it is for you, because I'm not giving up my coffee. And but it's a really good demonstration of how it drips off the balance sheet and you don't know it. And if we have time after this, I also would love to show you something that we use with a lot of our clients called the one number budget. And when we think about budgeting, this is an area when you think about where you're spending your money. Most of the time, budgeting makes people go cross-eyed. It makes me go cross-eyed. And then they just don't want to think about it or do it. And so I'll show you this one number budget that we use that makes that so much simpler for you to figure out what you have to live off of, and then you sort of figure out where you want to spend it. So we'll look at that. So let's just look at, market volatility. So just today alone, the Fed rose the interest rates again, another 75 basis points. And so, that's going to be something that is going to continue. So on the one hand, that's actually going to be good if you do have current savings in a CD or a savings account, that'll start to go back up a little bit. But if you have credit card debt or you're trying to buy a home, these are all areas that's going to be a little bit harder to do. But market volatility is something that's going to happen, and it doesn't really matter whether it's going up or down. It is going to always happen. And so the key thing, if you're looking at this chart, to keep in mind, so you see that the portfolio was measured between 1979 and 2016, and a lot of different things have taken place during that time period. But what this is really showing is the portfolio that, I think it's the yellow line, that did the best is the equities, which is your stock market. So that's going to go up and down, up and down. And which is actually what's happened to us right now. I've had a lot of clients, even my family members saying, oh my gosh, I've lost so much money, I don't know what to do. And oftentimes I think we don't realize sometimes when we're gaining that money. In the last decade or so, we've had a really good run on the stock market, and you probably gained more than you traditionally would have. So the market is sort of righting itself, but it does depend on where you are in your life cycle and when you need that money. One of the things too is your emotional ability to withstand the ups and downs. Knowing what your goals are, and whether or not you're comfortable with that. I know it sounds silly, but I really like to tell people that when the market dips like this, like it's doing right now, you have to think of it as things that are on sale. It's an opportunity to come in and get things at a lower rate that will eventually, we know that the market is going to come back up. That's just history. It always does. It may not be the stock that you bought, right? Because things happen there, but it is going to come back up. Another thing to keep in mind when the market is down like this, if you have, let's say, an old 401k from a job that's just kind of sitting there and you haven't done anything with it, it's a time to think about maybe converting that into a Roth IRA. And so the Roth IRA, of course, is once you take it out, they're going to tax you the first time you can put the money into the account. But when you go to take that money out, it's not going to be taxed. And so when the market is down, depending on your personal tax situation, is a good time to think about making that switch. So you'll pay a little bit lower taxes. You're going to go in and you're going to get things that are going to be on sale, so to speak, and then you'll get the benefit of, as the market starts to come back up, and you won't have to pay the taxes on that money as it starts to go back up. That's always a good way to sort of look at when things are going up and down. I'd love to do, if Melissa, if you're open to unmuting yourself, and you and Cheryl could kind of do this together as a group thing. And we're just going to do an exercise to talk about what you think is the most liquid and or the easiest way to tap into your finances. So of the things listed, what do you think is the easiest thing to get your hands on your money?
The easiest is probably bank account.
I would say that too.
Yeah, just easiest.
That's right. Yep. Bank account. Let's see. Oh, what did it do?
Uh-oh, it went away.
Oh.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay, the rest of it. All right. All right. So the other options are investments, retirement, real estate, or insurance cash value.
I would say investments. Next.
Oh, next, right.
Or are we
Okay.
saying the least? Oh.
You're saying the easiest to get out. So insurance cash value. We'll talk about all these in a second as they go through. I just want to. So the next thing, of course, then we have left retirement, investments, or real estate.
And we're gonna go over these once they're all there. Cause I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I'll
Insurance
explain it.
cash value. Okay. All right. So that it's investments, real estate, and retirement, right? Those are the next three.
And retirement.
Yes.
I still say investments.
Because I feel
can't.
it's tricky. Like for real estate,
The
you have
volume-
to actually do something. Like you have.
Bill?
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I wasn't sure. No, I'm just trying to like understand. I'm very right brain, so I'm like not so left brain. But for me, like I'm thinking retirement or not retirement. Your real estate. Don't you have to like sell to get the money? And that takes some time. So it would take some time to liquidate that, I think. So I feel like that would be much later.
So let's
Yeah.
Here, what would be easier? Let's just go through it. So investments.
You were right, Cheryl.
Retirement, and then real estate.
And so are you.
Yeah. Okay, goody. So yeah.
Yeah. And so I think the way to look at it, obviously we talked about the easiest way to get, you could go right now to the ATM and get your money out of your accounts, right? Done. Easy. So bank accounts makes the most sense. Insurance cash value. So whole life or permanent life insurance is something that inside of that life insurance bucket. So let's just say you had $100,000 policy and you're paying your premium every year according to your policy plan, and you're growing. It's like almost like a savings account inside is also growing, and that's called the cash value. So you have $100,000 and you have $100,000 death benefit, but there's like this interest that's growing inside of it. And so why that is listed as number 2 is that you could take that out at any time, and you can either pay it back later or you don't pay it back at all, and it comes out tax-free because you had taxable money that went into it. And what would happen if you decided, okay, I'm going to take out my cash value has grown to $25,000. I'm going to take that out because I want to do something specific with it, or I need it as an emergency fund or what have you. And then what I can do is the death benefit will actually just be decreased if you decide, okay, I'm just not going to put it back. So then your death benefit would go from 100,000 to 75,000. But it's something that I don't think a lot of people realize, and I can kind of
just learned about
the
this.
look on your faces too, like
yeah,
the value of it.
Yeah, somebody just, I don't know where it was. I swear I just heard about this like a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, I was like, are you kidding me? I didn't know. And my husband, like, he has no idea. So now I get to be the, one telling him, hey, let's look at this because.
Well, well, absolutely. And it is something that, should be a part of the overall conversation. And so as we talked about investments, obviously you can get to that money relatively simple as well. Retirement, there are certain limitations. There are certain times when you can take that money out and you won't be penalized for it if you're a first time home buyer. There are some medical, exemptions and that sort of thing. But, most qualified retirement plans have a penalty that if you take it out before 59 and a half. It'll be a 10% penalty. And then real estate, obviously, it is probably on your balance sheet one of the largest, things that you own. But in order to get the equity out of it, it would be a difficult thing to do. So that's why it's on the bottom.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do the same thing, and maybe I won't mess with it this time. But if we were thinking about what was the, most important thing about, where you might be impacted if you don't have a proper or the right amount of protection. So what would be the biggest threat on this list, and what would be the smallest threat? Would it be you're in an accident and you lose your car? What would you say?
Oh, sorry. I was ready to guess the biggest threat.
Okay.
But go ahead and read them first. I'm sorry. I'm that student.
Yeah. No, I just thought it would be easier. Hospitalization, obviously. What happens if you lost your job, or you lost it because you had an illness, right? You lost your house, or you got sued. So let's just see what it says here.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
that's exactly
Loss of income.
Yeah. Because with hospitalization, how long,
right?
Who knows, is this person could have streams of income coming through anyway, so.
Absolutely.
And then,
Loss
Cheryl,
of income.
you want to guess the next?
What is your biggest asset? What's your biggest asset?
Me personally? Or just everyone?
Anybody. What's your biggest asset?
Your ability to earn money, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah. We often think about it being our homes, right? Because I said, it's a large thing on your balance sheet, but it's our ability to earn an income. So, oh, I'm sorry, you said you wanted to guess, but we moved on. A lawsuit, getting sued. Oftentimes, people don't realize the need for having what would they call umbrella protection, umbrella insurance that gives you an overgeneralized liability above what you have in your home and auto insurance. Hospitalization, I think that's the rising cost of healthcare. Loss of your home, which is why we have home insurance, and obviously the lowest is the loss of a car. Wondering if this is, I'm going to skip over this one. This is not as, I think, valuable if it lets me skip over it. So I want to talk about, we talked a little bit about retirement and retirement income, and that being a really big issue for all of us. People are living, we are now in it, which is great. There's been a tremendous amount of medical advancements, right? And but people are living in retirement maybe 30 years or more, depending on beyond when they worked, right? And so when you're in that working phase, let's just say it was 25 to 65, 40 years, you've got to earn enough money to live off of, to just enjoy your life, and to fund your retirement for 30 years, including your health, thing. And so I think this is probably one of the biggest things that we're going to face in our generation, that and being sandwiched in between taking care of children and aging parents. Everybody is dealing with that, and women in particular are going to be even worse, because we're going to be most often are the caretakers. And so then that ends up putting us in a position where we have to step back from our job, or we're not able to take on more responsibility as we grow in our career, because we're managing multiple balls at one time. And so I think this slide just really kind of talks about where the retirement income is going to come from, you know. And so you look at the Social Security box, and that's not even 50% of our retirement is going to come from Social Security. And then we look at just, you know, pensions, right? Pensions are not things that even really exist anymore. More and more, unless you're working for the federal government, or perhaps, you know, perhaps the state government, most of the other ways that we had pensions, they no longer exist. And so more and more companies are putting and this, I don't know if this is the right word, but the burden, so to speak, of you managing your own retirement. You know, they're trying to incentivize people to save, and so they want to give you, you know, matches to the 401k, but things like that. And I'm not suggesting that those aren't good places, but at the end of the day, you can just look at the number here and look at, you know, where that source of income is going to come from. So it's really important that we make sure that, that we align ourselves with guaranteed sources of income. You know, there's the Social Security. You want to have multiple buckets when you're thinking about your retirement. So you've got your retirement plans, the qualified and the non-qualified plans, and your investments, but you really also want to have money that you can rely on, so that in the time that you've got a volatility, you know, in the market, and you're seeing your retirement accounts go wild, that you have other sources that you are relying on. So this is just a good list of some of those things. And we already talked about pension plans, but that kind of not really being one that most people can rely on. But, you know, you have your Social Security, there's an annuity. We talked about life insurance as a role. The cash value in that life insurance can then be utilized in a down market. You know, if you're using money out of your retirement accounts and it doesn't make sense because the market has dipped, you can, if you have cash value that's been built up in a life insurance policy, that's another place to get that money from. And then, of course, you know, certificates of deposit, places where there is a guaranteed return. And this is where, you know, working with someone who's a financial professional can help to figure out what are all of these strategies. You know, how do we, you know, one of the things that I know we work with our clients a lot on is to make sure that they have the protections that they need, the savings that they need. We really encourage people to think about 15 to 20% of their income as things that they should be saving. That doesn't just mean like in the bank as a savings account, but it's a combination of retirement accounts, investments, just cash on hand, multiple ways to do that. But what we really want to make sure that when we're working with clients is we want to help you find that income that's dripping off that balance sheet, so that you're continuing to live the life that you want to live, and you're not having to continuously give up in order to meet some of these goals. So there's a lot of ways that financial professionals can help you kind of navigate that. Oh, and then it's just, well, thank you, ladies. Any questions? Any kind of you know, conversations to continue to have about what we covered? I'm all ears. Even if anything we didn't cover, if there's something that you just have a burning question about, that you want to talk about. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing, Cheryl, so we can just talk. That sounds good.
I'm curious what you think is the reason that most people don't have enough money for retirement. I mean, I guess maybe the obvious answer is we just spend all our money, but maybe is there more to it than that?
I think it's a really good question. I less than I want to say it's like 4% of Americans, 5% of Americans are saving, just in general, not even
Wow.
thinking about retirement, but just saving. Or you have, if you ask someone, they may have $400 that they've saved to their name. So I think that it's somewhat cultural, because if you think about one of the things that I'm most challenged by and frustrated by is a lack of financial literacy in our school system, right? I don't know who I was talking to earlier today, and we were talking about this, and I said, I remember learning how to write a check. I mean, they taught me how to write a check, and I'm thinking, oh, my son wouldn't even know what a check is today. And and so, just thinking about ways that we teach our children to think about money. And I'll tell you, this was of no financial, like nothing I studied, nothing like that. But what I started doing with my son when he was really little, and he would ask for, oh, I want this, as all children do. I said, put it on the Amazon wish list. Because what it taught him to do was, if you still really wanted it, then we would determine whether or not you can have it. But most of the time, you moved on.
Yep.
And, and you
The truth.
kind of like, it is, because it's so easy in our society
Me
to just
too.
buy.
The
Me
save
too.
for later.
Me too.
The save for later. I go back, I'm like, I wanted that. I did. Oh.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, it's so true. And I mean, I grew up at a time when there was layaway, right? And I remember wanting things when I was a kid, and my mom was really good about being like, all right, let's put it away. You'll pay a certain amount, and then you can get it when you pay it off. And I just remember feeling so like empowered as a teenager when I
Yes.
paid that thing, right?
Oh.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And I get to have it. Well, now we just have it,
Yeah.
and then pay later, and maybe, and it's, the debt, and the student loan debt in this country is absurd. Absurd.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So
Well, you have been fabulous, and the timing couldn't be better. It's one of those things that's kind of been on my husband and my to-do list, is to find a financial advisor. And for whatever reason, there's